Hey everyone, JCS StarCraft here, bringing you Game 2 of the Best of 5 Finals for the Zotac number 21 between SeleCT and MorroW. Action getting started here on Xel'Naga Caverns. SeleCT going to be spawning as the red Terran in the bottom left-hand corner, and MorroW going to be spawning as the blue Terran in the upper right-hand corner right there. And so MorroW does not need any introduction in the world of StarCraft 2 at the moment. One of the reigning champions, or the so-called champions, having had won the IEM championship as a substitute, which was fantastic, and pretty much winning everything along the way. I have casted a few of his games. He won a Go for SC2. Right now there is some chatter right here from SeleCT. I think in the last game SeleCT was very frustrated with the amount of lag going on and actually GG'd out pretty early in the game because he wasn't able to micro effectively, and here it goes again. So a lot of these weekly cups seem to be played by some sort of lag. Not very favorable to the players at all. But getting back to MorroW, he has had an incredibly great winning streak since the IEM. Has won a few weekly cups. I think he won the Wolf Cup number 6 and the Go for SC2 number 34, I'm going to guess, is the number I'm going to be throwing out. So on a very great streak right now. SeleCT, meanwhile, one of the top players in the United States on SC2 ranks. He's been hovering in the top 5 for quite some time. At the time of this casting, he had something like 1,700 BattleNet points, which is an insane amount of BattleNet points, and a very, very formidable player at the MLG in Raleigh. I think he took 7th place there. He is originally from Korea, a very strong Warcraft 3 player, and I think he actually won in Warcraft 3 at the WCG back in 2004 or 5, something along those lines. Hopefully the facts are correct there. So two of the top players in the world right now. MorroW is ranked something along the lines of number 10 on the SC2 ranks. On Gosu Gamer, he is ranked number 1. Gosu Gamer is Gosu Gamer hosts the Gosu Cup, as well as is a betting website for a lot of the esports out there, and keeps track of a lot of the players across the official games as well. Another great site to check out would be SC2 Inside. But getting back to the game right now, it looks like a very standard opening and build for both players, a 1-1 and possibly a follow-up with the starport. Now SeleCT in the previous game showed that he really enjoyed instead of going for the early Banshee, as a lot of Terran players do for the harass, SeleCT instead gets the starport and then tries to send his Marines into medevac for his harassment as well. Slightly more dangerous and risky, in my opinion, than getting the Banshee, because the Banshee really allows you to harass and hit the supply line of the Terran, which is one of its weakest points, without giving up the army at your base. That being said, though, when SeleCT does go in with his Marines, it does cause his opponents to come back with their entire army to fend it off as well. So kind of a big portable army unit right there. MorroW going to be moving the factory over to throw down the tech lab to get it closer to the starport so that he can swap it out just a little bit faster so he can get the Banshee up as soon as possible. Meanwhile, SeleCT doesn't really have to worry about that, because he doesn't need the tech lab onto a starport. He's just going to have these pretty raw in the beginning so he can pump out units as quickly as possible. Looking at the harvester count, both players are dead even at this point, so very similar openings. Most likely a 12 racks with a 13 refinery, and also SeleCT getting the reactor down so that he can start pumping out as many Marines as possible, so that when the medevac does come out, he is able to load it up very quickly. He also pumps out Hellions from his factory to keep that early pressure going on his opponent. Right now grouping up with 2 Hellions and going to be testing the front of MorroW's base. Now I really like this strategy from SeleCT and the build that he's using, because it allows him to keep pressure in the early game, as well as drop a very strong and formidable army that isn't quite as easily defended as the Banshee is. And looking at the production tab, MorroW is going to be pumping out his Banshee pretty soon. SeleCT now throwing down a scan to see what is going on, and MorroW is going to be prepared for the medevac, as it did happen to him in the last game. And now spacing out his Marines to protect against anything coming in through the front, especially the Hellions, as well as not clumping them together so that the Hellions don't spray in a single line and have a more difficult time taking down the Marines. Here comes that Banshee across the field. SeleCT is barely going to see that coming as he temporarily walked away from the Zonaga watchtower. So Marines are going to be dropped and try to intercept that Banshee for MorroW. And unfortunately for MorroW, his attack is going to be thwarted. That Banshee with only 14 HP at this point. Now SeleCT is I think that Zonaga watchtower was huge for him because his main army right now, not too much at his base. He did pump out a Viking to defend at his base and will need to use a scan if the Banshee cloaks, which MorroW does have. MorroW, meanwhile, going to be retreating and even throwing down a bunker inside his base. This is a very smart bunker placement for him, as it's just frying the Hellions before they even have a chance to run in there and really fry it down. Banshee is getting repaired as it's trying to do some damage, but right now SeleCT is doing a lot of damage on the backside, and MorroW has to run over at this point. Now MorroW, very interestingly enough, trying to focus fire a little bit. I think he's going to start targeting that medevac. Yeah, he's targeting the medevac pretty soon, as that medevac is definitely making this army a lot more difficult to take out and has wiped out everything. But looking at the units lost right now, MorroW actually is down a little bit more, has lost more of his supply line. SeleCT doesn't have a problem sacrificing the Marines because it's not as if MorroW can run across and retaliate immediately. MorroW, meanwhile, is actually had come in, I'm sorry about that, on the action and used the Banshee to try to do some harass, but there were several Marines in the base already. And now SeleCT going to be throwing down the tech lab so that he can go ahead and tech up right now after that early push. Looking at the income tab, though, you do see that SeleCT has pulled ahead slightly, 29 to 26. Now, in Terran vs. Terran, I find this to be very critical in the early to mid game because Terran players, while they do have the mules, in a mirror match, unfortunately, there's really no way to catch up in SCV count once you're behind from your opponent, unless you have another base out there. But you know, you can count on the fact that most likely it's going to be pretty similar. MorroW right now here with the Cloaked Banshee, not going to give up and taking out that SCV before it finishes the command center. It looks like while SeleCT does have missile turrets ready and engineering bay down, has to kind of wait for his scan to replenish and is wasting mules during this time. So MorroW, I think, doing a great job still keeping the pressure going with this Cloaked Banshee and trying to take out this command center. I imagine that SeleCT, it is a little bit slower that he's shooting at it, so SeleCT won't have a problem canceling it, although I'm sure he doesn't want to because it looks like it's pretty decently built as well. MorroW coming right back in, going to do even more damage to it, and I'd imagine that at this point, yes, a Raven is on its way out, so that harassment will end. Meanwhile, it looks like SeleCT has also gone with the Banshee a little bit later, but possibly throwing MorroW off, and MorroW not going to be focusing on detection as he presumes that his opponent is going pretty much with that Marine medevac combination, and that is a very late research for SeleCT. But SeleCT is going to move in here with his Cloaked Banshee. MorroW does not have the ability to scan from either base at this point. It has zero detection. So MorroW, unfortunately, going to get his units just blasted away here and is just waiting around for that, hoping that the mana is going to run out on the Banshee right now. And so pretty interesting retaliation from SeleCT. Very smart play of his own. Both players working on the supply line, as that is, as I said earlier, one of the most vulnerable parts about playing Terran versus Terran. The other units, of course, the other races can much more quickly replenish their supply line, as Protoss can chrono boost away if they want to, and looks like SeleCT now going to be moving across with that Marine tank combination and the Raven there to take out any sort of Banshee. The Banshee was a little bit caught out of position and now is going to go down. SeleCT now pushing in pretty strongly onto the front of MorroW's base. I don't think he has enough right now to really retaliate against this. The Hellions are coming in from behind, caught a little bit out of position. MorroW's units are just running around everywhere. SCVs are attacking the tank, and chaos is going down across the map. MorroW is able to bring in and surround. So the PDD is there, though, and the PDD I do not think absorbs any damage from the Marines, actually, as those bullets are pretty much invisible. Raven now going to be retreating across the field, and SeleCT has taken his expansion. Meanwhile, this Banshee is still blasting away, already with 6 kills. Taking a look at the Harvester count, though, right now, SeleCT is up 36 to 21. MorroW's going to have a really hard time trying to, and there was another one in the base as well. So SeleCT with a two-pronged attack on both sides, just blasting away at the SCVs. MorroW finally throwing down a missile turret in the middle of his supply line. SeleCT, meanwhile, had learned from the last game and threw down these missile turrets very early to hold off on the Banshee harassment in the beginning. Looking at the army tab, SeleCT is up 65 to 50. A big chunk of this. Wow, look, the Harvester count actually just dropped. So 38 to 17. MorroW is going to have to work really hard on trying to catch up in his economy at this point. The mules can do it to a certain extent, but SeleCT will also have mules in retaliation. Should stay significantly ahead of his opponent during that time. And I've seen this a lot in Terran vs. Terran. It's much less about, on the pro level, trying to move forward with siege tanks necessarily, but getting that early harass and ultimately getting the ability to eke out in the longer mid to late game right now. So it looks like MorroW is going to be coming in with a pretty decently sized army in retaliation. Although the supply count is 80 to 61, 20 of those are actually SCVs, so the armors are pretty even, and if MorroW can micro this correctly, might be able to pull off a pretty decisive victory if he can catch SeleCT off guard. But looking at the unit count right now, something that's very important is looking at the Viking count. SeleCT actually has more Vikings in the air, and ultimately I think will win this battle, because once they can take out the air, if they can properly, they get that further sight advantage and allow their siege tanks to have further range. Meanwhile, MorroW is going to have to rely on trying to stim in some right now and getting caught off guard. The SCVs are taking most of the damage, so great move by SeleCT there, running the SCVs to get the aggro on and then sprinting in with the Marauders, taking out all of the tanks, and pretty much all of MorroW's forces are down now. So looking at the army count, it's 81 over 52. Great play by SeleCT right there, sacrificing the cheapest units in the game and just sprinting in with this Marauder, so making the splash damage hurt the tanks themselves. MorroW now in a bit of trouble, way behind on almost every unit, and actually dropping down with the Vikings. So actually a decently smart play right there. Although he now won't have any range, his tanks don't have enough. Well, actually, I think they do see because of the refinery right there. But now with that refinery gone, and once this orbital command flies out of there, which he has to if he doesn't want to lose it, he's not going to have sight on those tanks anymore. And now SeleCT can actually push forward with the tanks and take 3 shots at it. But it looks like he's just going to push in anyways, and SCVs are streaming out across the field. Siege tanks are trying to blast him as they come in. Siege tanks do go down for SeleCT at this point, but MorroW is now severely crippled as he has lost his other orbital command center, has to rebuild at this point, and SeleCT is just going to be taking, oh, it looks like he's just throwing out a supply depot right here. I thought he was going to be taking his third base. No, yes, he is back here at his second natural expansion. MorroW going to be pushing in at this point to try to see what damage he can possibly do, but is significantly behind at this point. So very great play by SeleCT, and MorroW with the GG, knows how far behind he is, does not want to drag out the game as well, and a lot of respect for his opponent. So it seems like SeleCT has tied it 1-1, no lag in this game, and a great game from both players. This has been JCS StarCraft, and I'm signing off.